All right, we're back with some buy lows, sell highs, and I'm not even gonna waste any time and hit the intro because I don't have one. I'm gonna kick it off right now by saying Damian Harris is a buy low, not only because James White has been hurt, but I think his one down performance against one of, if not the best run defense in the league, is really going to make people shy away from him. He wasn't really a high pedigree pick going into fantasy drafts this year, likely falling to the fifth, sixth, or seventh round. So him putting up 1 to 2 good games to start the season, 100 yards rushing and then 60 yards and a touchdown. It was pretty good. It was nothing to really write home about. And then he puts up 6 for 14 against the Saints. May cause people to sour on him. And on top of that, he gets Tampa this week. So not only are people thinking, oh, he sucked last week, nobody runs in Tampa, he's going to suck this week too. Let me sell him to somebody who thinks that he's a good enough runner to salvage fantasy value. I would be scooping that up for low end running back 2, high end RB3 prices, because although he does have a string of tough matchups from last week to this week, facing NFC South opponents who are really good at stopping the run, he gets Houston and Dallas thereafter. We know he is a guy who's going to see 15 plus touches in this backfield. And although not on an elite offense, we have seen that he is going to be their goal line back. He is explosive and elusive enough to create big plays, make big runs. And even if it's 15 carries a game, he's a guy who can average 5+ yards a carry and turn that into 75+ yards. And with the goal line work, like I mentioned, he can be a touchdown threat week in and week out. If you can somehow sell like Chase Edmonds for him, I would go for it. I think he's in a very similar conversation to James Robinson. And if you were to ask me who I'd rather have, I will probably lean slightly to James Robinson just because of the pass catching work. But I think those guys can be mentioned in similar sentiments going forward just because of the pure volume. And I think Damian Harris is a better runner on the ground and in a better offense than what James Robinson is. The disparity there is, I guess, the touchdown upside with Harris and the receiving upside with Robinson. But I think the pass catching ability is more consistent and stable week to week. So I give the slight edge to Robinson. But Damian Harris is still a guy that I'm interested in buying because people are going to sour on him and probably already have after one down week. Second player that I'm buying is actually Henry Ruggs. Henry Ruggs was a guy that early in his career, as early as last year, was declared a bust. He was the first wide receiver taken in a class that had fucking Justin Jefferson, had Jerry Jeudy, had CeeDee Lamb, had Brandon Ayuk, had all these guys that if I forget to name one, then the fans of that player will tell me that I'm an idiot for forgetting Chase Claypool or whoever. You get it. It was a loaded wide receiver class. He was declared a bust, but he's finally being used in a role that exemplifies his strengths. He's not just a deep threat, although he is winning in deep situations. He's on a team that is led by Derek Carr, who is slinging it like a fucking MVP right now. They are cooking. Their defense is playing well. And along with that defense playing well is Henry Ruggs playing extremely well. His targets this year haven't been crazy. It's been 5 and 7 and 7, but that's a big step up from last year. I believe last year he didn't see a 7 target game all year. Now he's done it in back-to-back weeks, playing against Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Miami, 3 pretty tough defenses. Then he gets the Chargers, Chicago, and Denver. Denver's no slouch. I said this in yesterday's video with Derek Carr. It's a pretty tough schedule, but still, I'd be willing to buy because the talent is finally showing out and they're finally starting to use him as a player that we thought he could probably be. Coming out of Alabama, he's the clear-cut wide receiver 2 on this squad behind Darren Waller, who's a tight end. But he's the second receiving option on a squad that seems to be high scoring, high powered, and very pass heavy. And last up, we have Stephon Diggs. I told you in the waiver wire show that this team is kind of like Arizona in the fact that they spread the ball around a lot. And we've seen Diggs and DeAndre Hopkins, respectively, kind of fall off a bit because of how much they're spreading the ball around. But Diggs is still getting a shit ton of targets, seeing 13, 8, and then 10 this past week. And he's played Pittsburgh, Miami, and Washington, all 3 teams, very good defenses. It starts to lighten up a bit and a lot of bit over these next few weeks, playing Houston, Kansas City, and Tennessee. I think he's about to eat. We know the talent's there. That's no question here. I'm not going to dive into in-depth numbers telling you why to pick up Stephon Diggs or why to trade for him because you already know the talent. He is a prime, clear-cut buy low, not only because we know how good this offense can be, but how good it has been over these last few weeks, putting up 35 and 43 points in each game. I think Stephon Diggs, his time is coming. We know the talent that he is. We know what he did last year, leading the league in receiving. I think he is well on his way to picking back up the pace. And as far as the sell high goes, and someone that I would trade and try to flip 1-for-1 for Stephon Diggs is Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley, similar to Diggs, isn't really having the best start. So it's not really a sell high, but it's a sell high in terms of if someone else in your league still values Calvin Ridley as an elite wide receiver 1, then I would trade him for wide receiver 1 prices because in this offense, I just don't see that top 3, top 5, maybe even top 8 finish happening because Matt Ryan fucking stinks. Calvin Ridley's still seeing targets, but the difference between him and Stephon Diggs is Diggs' targets come on an offense that is always in scoring position from a much better quarterback on a much better, higher paced, more pass happy offense. Whereas Calvin Ridley, I'm not going to say they're empty targets, but they're targets on an offense that just is not good. They can't get him. They can't get Pitts going. Their running game isn't great. The only bright spot in this team is Cordero Patterson right now, which, if that's your only bright spot on a team with guys like Kyle Pitts' talent and Calvin Ridley's talent, then you know shit's being wasted. So if you can flip that 1-for-1, if you can get Godwin for him, I would do it. If you can get Keenan Allen for Calvin Ridley, I would do it. There's just a whole bunch of guys that I would trade 1-for-1 to get rid of Calvin Ridley and just limit my exposure to this Falcons offense. Another sell candidate for me is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He made this list last week, and I think despite rushing for 100 yards and scoring a touchdown, it's just hard to have trust in him week to week. We've seen what he was the first 2 games of 2021. Sure, he might have been banged up from some fucking ankle injury that he suffered in a strip club dancing on a pole. I don't know what happened to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I don't know what's going on with this guy, but he is not getting any goal line work. He got lucky to score a touchdown on like some fake reverse trick play where they pretended to throw a screen to Travis Kelce, and they're like, you know what? We'll leave CEH wide open because this guy's slow as shit and he can't trot into the end zone. That's exactly what he did. That's not something to expect week over week. He's not getting a ton of usage in the receiving game. To me, he's like Chase Edmonds light. Actually, probably just Chase Edmonds clone at this point, and like a Miles Sanders type of player where the touchdown upside really isn't there despite being on a great offense. If you can sell him on the back of people thinking that he's on a great offense and will benefit from that, do it, because he's been on this great offense for 2 years and he's had just a handful of games where he's really proven that that argument holds true. Another sell candidate similar to Calvin Ridley, I'm not selling this guy because of talent, is Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool is a very good receiver, and I'd argue the best receiver in Pittsburgh. Deontay Johnson stands, do whatever you want, say whatever you would like. I think Chase Claypool is a more talented, more versatile, more dominant weapon. But Big Ben fucking stinks. He's worse than Matt Ryan. This dude's arm looks like a fucking cooked piece of spaghetti. He is garbage. He had 15 targets this past week. Chase Claypool did, in a week where Deontay Johnson was hurt. Najee Harris saw like 19 targets. And even still, in a week with all that volume, in a game where they were throwing the entire time, you know what Chase Claypool did? He put up like 90 yards. And that's still good. But 96 yards on 15 targets is not efficient. And against a team like Cincinnati, you expect a little bit more. His next few games don't get all that much easier anyways. Green Bay isn't great defensively, but they have Jair Alexander, who is a fucking menace, and I think he will be on Chase Claypool. Denver, straight lockup in Seattle. Who knows what will happen there? I just know that this offense is too shitty for me to want to invest in. And with that being the case, if you can sell Chase Claypool as a wide receiver 2 or even a high-end wide receiver 3 option off the back of this performance, I would do just that. And lastly, talking about my least favorite position, and no, not reverse cowgirl, it's the tight end position, Mark Andrews. He himself had a game with a shit ton of targets. And for a shit ton at tight end, that means like 7, which is what he had. He had 7 targets, turned that into 5 catches, 109 yards, 0 scores. It's become obvious that Marquise Brown is a top option in this receiving game. Sammy Watkins has carved out a pretty big role. Mark Andrews is the epitome of inconsistent. And with Rashad Bateman coming back, I just don't see a way where Mark Andrews can what's the word? Not recontrol, recapture. He can't recapture the target share that we thought he was going to have going to last year or even coming into this year. I don't think he's one of those elite top 3, 4, 5 tight ends. I think if I'm going to rank them, not in a row, but if I was going to name my top 5, it would easily be Kelce, Waller, Kittle, Hockenson. And then shit gets dicey after that. You can throw Pitts in there, but I'm not going to. Honestly, those are really the only tight ends I trust week to week. And I guess you can throw in Gronk when he's healthy. Aside from that, to me, it's just not even worth owning a tight end that's in those middling ranges. Like, you can just put in Goddard over him or Higbee over him or Gesicki over him. I would rather try to reclaim pretty good wide receiver 2 value off the fact that people think that tight end is such a scarce position that they want to have a guy like Mark Andrews. If you can trade Mark Andrews and like a bench piece for DJ Moore, or trade Mark Andrews and another piece for like Mike Williams, go for it. Because the difference between you starting Mike Williams and a waiver wire tight end like Pat Fryermuth or like Gesicki was on your waiver wires, as opposed to Mark Andrews and whatever shitty flex option you have right now, give me Mike Williams and Fryermuth over Mark Andrews and like fucking Tyler Boyd. So that's what I would do. That's how I approach things. Leave your trade questions down below. I'll try to get back to you. Leave any other buy low or sell high candidates or questions that you have in the comments. I'll try to get back to you. Leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed. Thumbs down if you didn't. Stay tuned for more content on the week. But that's it for today. We'll catch you guys sometime soon. Peace.
Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on. Rest in peace to my vagabond. Rapper, song, singer, suspended, subpoena for misdemeanors. Dreamer, held back asses, Loki still a there. And I still shake a boat squat. Ran for my broke. Got city on the come up. Shot that nigga.